Tonight on the Late Debate, Starmer's premiership plunged into crisis. Wes Streeting quits government, paving the way for a possible leadership challenge. Labour's turmoil began after the horror show of the local elections, where Reform and the Greens made big gains. But what chance the MP for Ilford North will get the top job in Downing Street? Also tonight, tackling hate in London after the Golders Green terror attack, will two big marches this weekend stoke division. Hello and welcome to the Late Debate. Sir Keir Starmer's premiership is on the brink after Wes Streeting quit as Health Secretary. The MP for Ilford North criticised what he called drift at the top of government and said it was clear the Prime Minister would not lead Labour into the next election. His resignation could trigger the start of a leadership contest. Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by Leonie Cooper from the London Assembly, a Labour member of the London Assembly. Lord Sean Bailey is a former Conservative candidate for London Mayor and a member of the London Assembly. And Luke Taylor is the Liberal Democrat for Sutton and Sheen. Leonie, are you happy with Keir Starmer?
I think it's a really difficult time, isn't it, for Labour in Parliament. There are about 400 Labour MPs. About 100 have said they'd like to keep him. About 100 have indicated that they wouldn't. And there's another 200 who've not come out publicly and said anything. I've spoken to people who fit into any of those three categories, and the ones who are keeping quiet are pretty cross with some of the ones who've said things because they do feel that really, actually, we should be getting on with the job and how much...
Getting on with the job and keeping Keir Starmer in charge?
Well, I think that's why the ones who've gone public and have come out on different sides of that point, I think the ones who haven't said anything publicly actually just want to get on with the job of what they were elected to do.
Do you agree with Wes Streeting that there's no vision for the country, just a vacuum?
I mean, I think it's interesting what Wes has done today, because I think he has now moved the debate on to another stage. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if other candidates do start to come forward. I mean, obviously, at the moment, he's resigned but hasn't actually declared as a candidate. And I think that's going to emerge over the coming days to see where this goes next.
Sean, you're a Conservative. You know a thing or two about PMs being challenged and threatened. How do you see this panning out?
Look, Keir Starmer's got to go. I think there's three things that's happening here. If you look at how he behaved when Boris was in this position, he was immensely sanctimonious. And I've just come back from campaigning for the local elections, and many people are saying if you judge Keir Starmer by the standards he laid out, he should have gone months ago. That's the first thing. There'll be many good Labour councillors up and down this region, or the South East region, who have lost their seats, and they will hold Keir Starmer at least partially, if not totally, responsible for that. And Leonie made a comment about getting on and delivering, and she's completely correct. Of course, we need a government that delivers of any colour, but of course he has absolutely no authority at all. And that authority has been damaged by the situation he's in. Remember, we're talking about U-turn Starmer. Before this happened, there's no way he can govern the country.
If he's that unpopular, wouldn't you rather he stayed in post?
No, because we have a country that we need to run. Of course, from a purely political point of view, I want him to go, and I'd love for there to be a Conservative government. But above that, we need a government that runs our country. And we have a Labour government at the minute, so we need a Labour Prime Minister who knows what he's doing. Keir Starmer does not have a plan. He should go.
Luke, how long do you give Keir Starmer?
We were spending our day watching our Blue Sky feeds and watching the news and seeing what was going on minute by minute. I think I made a bit of a fool of myself in the Lib Dem WhatsApp group saying that he'd bottled it, and then about 15 minutes later he resigned. So I ate my humble pie very quickly there, because it is such a fast-changing situation. Now, we called for Keir Starmer to go when he made the catastrophic error of judgment by appointing Peter Mandelson to such an incredibly prestigious position, knowing that he was an associate of the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. We said that showed the judgment that was not fit to be a Prime Minister. Keir Starmer's clearly an intelligent man, but he doesn't have the political chops to lead. And frankly, this is a distraction from addressing the challenges that we face, the cost of living crisis, energy bills increasing, and a crisis in the Middle East. We need to get back to fixing those problems that residents, our constituents, are all suffering from today.
What he does appear to have is a stubbornness. Can all of you see him hanging on there despite all this?
I can, yes.
Labour Party rules, as far as I understand, that make it quite hard to remove their Prime Minister, unlike the Tories. As we had quite a few practices at removing a Prime Minister, so we know
You got quite good at it.
We did. So you could see it can happen. Labour Party rules are stiff. I think the likes of Wes Streeting need to get out there or get off and leave us all alone. There needs to be some decisions made here. But I can see a very small chance where he limps on. Yeah. But if he limps on, we all suffer.
And I think that the challenge is that their hope is being put in Andy Burnham, who is not an MP. They are waiting for something to happen. They need somebody to stand down, and actually the courage isn't there amongst MPs to make that happen. And again, and I'm going to make this point, it is distracting from solving the problems that we all face, and it is something this country cannot afford. We need that clear leadership. Wes Streeting has undermined that, and whether he does limp on, he will be, I think, fatally weakened in the eyes of his MPs and ultimately the opposition. There will be an easy case to make that he's in position but not in charge.
I think I was going to say, I think the real problem is that all of this Westminster bubble chat, and obviously Luke's in the Westminster bubble, but Sean and I are, represent London. It distracts from the good news that the government could be talking about from today. It could be talking about the reduction in NHS waiting lists. It could be talking about the better than expected economic output figures. But in fact, all the conversation has all been about the psychodrama. And I do think making sure that the focus goes back to what the government is getting on and doing would be much, much more helpful for all of them in Parliament.
Earlier this evening, North West MP Josh Simons indicated that he was prepared to stand down to create a possible vacancy for Andy Burnham. Do you think Wes Streeting has dithered and it might cost him the chance to run for Prime Minister?
Well, I don't think you can say that he's dithered, because he's the only one so far who's, from the cabinet who's resigned and has written a fairly...
But Luke was saying he thought he'd bottled it. I mean, everyone thought it was going to happen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I think he was right to wait until after the King's speech. I don't think it would have been right to do it on the day of the King's speech.
But every second Wes Streeting delays, he's bottled it. You've got to get out there and get it done. Let's be clear, he's not dealing with a Prime Minister that is popular. What he's dealing with, though, is Labour MPs who won't step out because a whip will be removed. Keir Starmer himself demonstrated how willingly a Labour Prime Minister will remove the whip. Labour Party MPs are worried about themselves. What they should do is, as my young son would say, grow a pair, back whoever they're going to back, and get on with it. We can't wait any longer.
Absolutely.
Wes Streeting is regarded as a good communicator. Do you think he'd be a good Prime Minister?
I think he'd be able to communicate, because we've seen that over the last, almost 2 years, that he has been able to communicate what he's doing and why he's doing it. And also, I think he's been very good at managing, what I think we know in the past has been quite a difficult department for most secretaries of state to manage, which is the NHS. I mean, it's a massive ship of state.
I think on the NHS point, I think what the figures do obscure is a huge failure, though, in the amount of corridor care that we're seeing. And whilst, again, they put in the new hospitals programme that is hopefully delivering the new hospital in Sutton in 10 years' time, after the promises of Boris Johnson's 40 new hospitals, but there was no money for it. And we were misled by previous Tory government that was going to happen. I just don't see how any of this helps our residents and our constituents to have confidence that there's a plan. All of this dithering, and again, Sean's exactly right. Every minute he doesn't declare himself as a candidate is a minute that isn't being spent thinking about residents.
Can we just pause for a moment, because let's go back and remind ourselves how we got here. Labour's leadership crisis was triggered by a catastrophic set of local election results.
Zoe Garbett is duly elected as the Mayor of Hackney. Thank you.
London's political map was redrawn, with the Greens and Reform the night's big winners. 9 councils also fell to no overall control. One of the biggest shocks was in Hackney, where the Green Party won its first directly elected mayor.
Today, we start the fight back. In this election, over and over, people kept telling me that they felt let down. People kept saying it's hard for me and it's hard for us. Council services are failing those who need them most, and people are struggling to make ends meet. To everyone who voted for me, I truly thank you for putting your trust in me today.
Luke, the Lib Dems wiped out all the Conservative opposition in the London borough of Sutton. A one-party state's not good for anyone, is it?
It's a challenge that we're ready to pick up. And if you've ever seen a Liberal Democrat group argue with each other, there's always opposition internally. But I genuinely think that we had brilliant results in Sutton, Richmond and Kingston. And in every group where we had Liberal Democrat councillors across London, we gained seats. And we got breakthroughs in Hounslow and Tower Hamlets, where we'd been off the council for too long. And if you look out into the rest of the region, to Surrey, winning both East and West Surrey councils, huge demonstration that residents are ready for anti-extremists, they're ready for people who are experienced in delivering local services. And I'm really proud that so many people put their trust in the Liberal Democrats to represent them on their local councils.
Sure, despite expectations, the Conservatives didn't get Barnet and Wandsworth. Did you fall short?
But we did get Westminster, we kept Harrow. We actually had a very good local election.
You're putting a lot of spin on this, aren't you?
I won't deny it. We were worried. Let's be very clear. The Conservatives were worried that we were going to get a beating, such as we did in places like Sutton. We had a very bad night in places like Sutton. But across London, we actually did really quite well. And I think there's two things I noticed from campaigning locally. One, people were saying, I like Kemi. I might not be voting for you now locally, but I will definitely consider it for the general because I like Kemi and the fact that she actually has a plan. That came up a lot on the doorstep. And then there was a lot of wrangling around, have we really forgiven you yet? What's going on with the local Conservative Association? And we had to fight that and show people that we have a plan locally and that we can deliver. But on the whole, we had a very good night, certainly better than anybody had predicted.
Yeah, and is there anywhere in London you can take any comfort from?
I think it was a very bad night for Labour. I'm going to obviously not try and pretend it was anything but not a great night for us. And we've lost a great deal of really excellent councillors. And I'd like to pay tribute to some of them who'd served. Some of them had served for a great many years and done a lot in local government. Unlike Sean and Luke, I don't think it was a great night for the Liberal Democrats. They didn't break through in another borough, and all the talk was whether or not they could take
Merton.
They didn't take Merton. No, that stayed very firmly Labour. Labour increased its majority there, and I don't think it was a great night for the Conservatives because they didn't take back Wandsworth or Barnet, as you said at the beginning. They've gone into no overall control, and I think it's really sad that people felt so strongly that they wanted to not have Labour directly elected mayors in Hackney and Lewisham and also in Croydon, where there was a rivalry with the Conservative. We did retain Newham with the directly elected mayor there. So I think it's a bit of a mixed picture, but I think Labour in London needs to have a look at our offer and why people were looking elsewhere.
But so many councils under no overall control. That can't be good, can it?
That's the point for the Conservatives. We marched forward in
worry.
places like Wandsworth, etc., where we were able to get extra seats and be part of that no overall control. We kept the mayor in Croydon as well, where our nights were really bad. There's a smattering of seats on the outside London, such as my local seat like Romford, where we took quite a heavy beating.
I mean, Havering has got no Conservative councillors.
And that's a historic low for us. But we will pick ourselves up. It's the nature of politics. We'll pick ourselves up and we'll march on. But on the whole, across London, we did far better than people imagined.
One of the things that actually I think we can all be reassured by is the failure of reform in London. I think I'm really proud of Londoners to have largely rejected that hateful populism. And actually, the one person who won't be celebrating is Nigel. And I think any night where he goes away disappointed and only having made big gains in one borough is good for all of us.
Because there was talk of reform going to do well in Barking and Dagenham, and that didn't happen,
No,
did it?
that didn't happen either. And it also, he was supposed to be leading the charge in Bromley, in Bexley, Barking and Dagenham, Havering, Hillingdon. So there was a long list of outer London councils where Reform were allegedly going to be winning seats and taking control, and we haven't seen that happen. So I think Luke's quite right to say that form of extremism, apart from in that one place, has mostly fallen on stony ground.
I would sound a note of caution about calling Reform voters extreme. Let's be very clear. They don't see...
No, we didn't say
not
that
the
voters are
voters.
extreme.
But they are
Politics.
voting. They are voting.
The party is
hold on.
extreme.
They are voting for those people who you are saying are putting out extreme messages. Yes. They don't see themselves as extremists, and I think you can't discount people's feelings in that way.
No.
You have to answer the question.
So what was it in Havering that swung it for Reform?
In Havering, on the doorstep, a lot of it was about immigration, but much more of it actually was about the cost of living. A lot of it was about they don't see a government that's doing things for them, and they haven't finished quite punishing us, and they're just beginning to punish Labour. I think Labour has to worry, will this emanate across the country? One of the things that Nigel said that I wasn't happy to hear, but I fear may be true, he said Reform are the only nationally competitive party. Now, we would take exception with that, but if that's true,
Well,
if
I don't
that's
think
true,
it's true.
well, I'm
It's
telling
not
you,
true.
I
It's
just
not.
said I'd
Yeah.
take exception with that, but if that's
Absolutely.
true, Labour need to worry because he's coming for them.
Let's talk about the
It's not
march of
true.
the Greens. How worried are you by the Greens?
Well, I mean, obviously, we Zoe Garbett, who you've just seen becoming the mayor of Hackney until 5 minutes ago, was in fact one of our colleagues on the Assembly. I do have some concerns about some of the statements that they've made on the Assembly about legalising drugs and legalising prostitution, and being anti-police has also been a bit of a theme. Now, I do find that really quite concerning. I think if people are going to be leading large local authorities, you know, I've always found it's really helpful to work with the police. I'm not saying they're perfect, but working with them and making sure that they're taking local people's views into consideration is better than just moving into an opposition to the police and that sort of thing.
Luke, are you worried about the Greens? Because in somewhere like Southwark, they did well, you didn't do quite so well, and that used to be a Lib Dem stronghold.
It absolutely did. But I think when you are a populist, you don't play by the same rules. You make promises you can't keep. As we've seen Reform falling apart in Kent and in the county councils that they're running around the country at the moment, they've not been able to do what they promised. I think the Greens will find it very, very difficult to deliver the things that they put on their leaflets that they have no power to do in councils. And I think people will be, frankly, pretty cheesed off when they discover that all the things they've been promised are not happening. And I think we've already seen 6 by-elections announced by Green councillors who were elected who either were ineligible or have been arrested for spreading anti-Semitic messages, and even 2 who obviously standing now as mayors, which so is
I
a
think
huge
that's a
cost, £25,000
really-
a piece
It's
to
a really
local
important
residents.
point, that making the same point about the Greens as about Reform. The people who vote Green and vote Reform are not the same as the people who run the parties.
Correct.
And as they come more into the public domain, I think some of the people who voted for them will be equally disappointed.
Okay, let's talk about one other pressing issue politicians can't ignore, and that's the rise of anti-Semitism. The terror attack in Golders Green, where 2 Jewish men were stabbed, left many in the community feeling unsafe, and patience with politicians was wearing thin.
Words don't mean a thing. Show me. Show the world. Show the world what we can really do.
They will harness the potential of the pride felt across this country for its communities. My government will take urgent action to tackle anti-Semitism and ensure all communities feel safe.
So we heard there from the King talking about the government's longer-term plans for tackling anti-Semitism. More immediately, there are 2 marches planned in London this weekend, one pro-Palestine, one far-right. The police are very worried about hate speech. Should they be banned, Sean?
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear. There's been too many people who've said we have the right to protest. Of course we have the right to protest, but at some point it's been abused. And if we don't stand up for that, we denigrate that right to protest, and also we allow these marches to be used to amplify that behaviour. I want to be clear, we have emboldened people's behaviour by accepting these marches as if they're completely anodyne and have no threat below them. They do. And the other piece, the really important piece for the police, there's been talk about using face recognition technology on only one of the marches. One of the things I know the Metropolitan Police hate is the idea that they police at 2-tier levels. If they want to avoid that, they either use that technology at both marches or neither marches, or people will have a legitimate reason to say you are policing on 2 different tiers.
So
You're shaking your head there, Luke.
I'm going to come with the counter view. I do think we need to allow marches to go ahead, to allow people to express themselves and to give, you know, that democratic voice.
But
that
are
the residents have.
pro-Palestine marches, as Sean say, amplifying
But we
anti-Semitism?
have to crack down on anti-Semitism and anything that is illegal, that is said, any statements that are made. And I think it's down to the marchers themselves that have more of a responsibility to call out unacceptable behaviour, call out anti-Semitic statements, call out the behaviour of the marchers so that they can be pulled aside and actually action taken by the police. Because if we do not protect those rights to express in a legal and in a safe and in a respectful way, then we do undermine the freedoms that we all rely on to express ourselves and to demonstrate in this country. And that's a danger. And I do not want to see marches banned. I want to see people behaving in a more respectful and legal way.
Where do you stand, Leonie, on banning the march?
Look, some of my constituents have got in touch and said, you know, the Stephen Yaxley and Unite the Kingdom march should be banned. Others have got in contact with me and said, why on earth are we not banning, you know, the pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza marches? And the problem with that is people are very interested in banning one or the other. And I think unless you go down the route that Sean is talking, and I do think you then tread into the space of saying freedom of speech has got to be curtailed. But what I do think is you cannot have marches of any description where the incitement to racial hatred, the incitement to religious hatred is allowed to flourish. And if that means that the organisers need to take more action in stewarding and stopping that kind of thing, and if the police need to take stronger action, the laws are there. Those things are illegal and they shouldn't be allowed. But I do think the marches, I don't think you can constrain freedom of speech, because otherwise where do people go to express themselves?
If you look at the comment that that lady just made on the video you just played, she asked, where's the activity? But she's not asking for us to police ourselves. She's asking for the government to step in. And let's be clear, if you have 10, 15, 30, 100,000 people on the march, you cannot police bad language. You have to send a message. We will actually take steps, and until you send that message, we are going to be fooled. Politics is working on the idea that everybody's playing by the rules. A large number of these people are not playing by the rules. We're being taken for fools, and we need to take action.
Luke, what's your explanation for why anti-Semitism has risen so much in London?
Because I think that, well, leaders haven't stamped it out within their own political parties. I think we have seen over the last decade or so really concerning incidents of anti-Semitism within political parties. That has to be the responsibility of the leadership to stamp that out, and it has to happen quicker. Again, candidates in the local elections, I think we know that predominantly from a single party have been accused of anti-Semitic comments. We've had 2 arrests made in Lambeth, one who's now been elected as a councillor and may well have to cause a by-election. Be very careful what I'm saying here, but I think it is down to political leaders, it is down to community groups. We need to strengthen the powers for Prevent to actually have interventions in spaces where there is anti-Semitism happening. Unfortunately, again, we've got political parties who are wanting to reduce the powers of Prevent, reduce the ability to combat those extremists. And that is dangerous for everyone. And again, it comes back to the protests. We need to be able to protest, but you have to do it responsibly. And if we're not stamping down on it wherever it is seen, then we are missing the opportunities, and people will feel unwelcome, people will feel vulnerable, and we cannot have that in any shape or form in a modern London.
OK, well, I'm afraid we've run out of time for this evening. I was going to ask all of you to name who you think the next Prime Minister will be, but I'm not going to be that cruel. We'll be back to discuss that next time round. So thank you to all my guests for tonight. Thank you to Leonie Cooper, to Lord Bailey and Luke Taylor. We're back next month. Until then, thank you for watching and good night. And thank you very much.